Hi, everyone. Wow, so nice to see so many of you here already. Welcome to another Vercel community session. Very excited to have you all here. We're actually on fire this week. This would be our third community session of the week. You may have seen everyone in my team do a session this week, and now we're going to end it with just me. So if this is your first time in one of our sessions, hi, I'm Pauline. You may have seen me around floating around the community space answering questions. And so this is always a great opportunity to connect with our community, our customers, and our users live. If you are in our community space and want to chat and engage with us throughout the session, drop a message in the chat and let us know where you're tuning in from. If you can't see the chat, join our community space over at community.vercel.com. And on the top, you should see a banner that links back to this stream, and then you just click on going using your Vercel account. Amazing. So excited to see so many of you here already. So just a reminder, if you are going to engage with us in the community chat, make sure to adhere to our code of conduct to make sure that we continue to run these sessions. Amazing. With all of that out of the way, I'm so excited for today's community session. We have James from Unkey, who will be talking about how to protect your applications from your own users. I'm very, very excited about the session. Welcome, James. Hi.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm glad we finally
So,
got this organized.
I know we kept moving it for a while, right?
Yep. And I apologize if my voice is a bit hoarse. I've been at conference for 2 days, so this is the second day after the conference. So we'll see how it goes, but we should be
I
fine.
mean, I saw the pictures on X and it looked good, so I hope you had a good time.
I had a really, really good time. It was it's my favorite conference to go to pretty much every year that isn't like run by like bigger companies. It's like all community based, open source. So it's always fun to go to.
Yeah. Which one is that one again?
It's all things open.
Nice. If you attended All Things Open and saw James, drop it in the chat and let us know. Awesome. With that, James, I will leave you to chat about your talk.
Cool. Yeah. So we're going to talk about protecting your applications from your own users today. Basically, it's always the theory of users are great until they aren't. And most of that time comes down to them accidentally doing something that you didn't want them to, or potentially they could be doing, something that is caused by your own UI or your UX. So, first thing we want to talk about rage clicks. Now, if you don't know what rage click is, it's usually what happens when users end up clicking on a form, a button, or something on the screen because it doesn't work the way they expect it to. Maybe there's not a loader. Maybe there's no confirmation that you've actually filled out a form, things like that. And that usually ends up in you having multiple submissions from the same person, potentially extra orders, extra cost on your end, things like that. And so you can prevent those pretty easily. First thing you can do is implement actual loading states. You can disable the buttons while they're being processed. You can try client-side debouncing or rate limiting, or even better, you can do both at the same time. And then you can use keys for critical operations so that you know that that has happened one time and it's not happening multiple times. And you see a lot of that in things like a good example is if you use resend, you can use these keys to say that like if a webhook comes in and you send an email, that you don't send an additional email if your webhook, for example, was to fire off again. So let's actually look at what Rage Click looks like. I built this app really quickly. So this is just essentially what happens if you try rage clicking things. So as you can see right now, it loaded and now it says it's processing. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see, but I can still click this button and it's still processing and I can still click this button and I just aren't getting any kind of confirmation And now the button's moving around on the screen because maybe you've got some layout shift or something like that. And now you can see that like this is being overloaded, and now my load times are 10 times as fast. And I've clicked 12 times and only made 10 API calls. And now I'm just telling you to stop clicking, but you keep clicking. And then maybe you get some error messages from our server that, stops you from doing things. Now, this is, happens quite frequently, but it's usually just out of like poor UI implementation more than it is like a user trying to do something malicious. Like in this example, like, when you're clicking it and now it's moved and now it's moved back and you're not really sure what's happening with this. And I built this to be super intentionally aggressive and annoying so that the user would click it more. And so you should really be like making sure that this button actually says what it's going to do. When it's actually loading, no one else can click it. And then if we go back and come back in, so it resets, like this processing should be, the button should be disabled while it's being processed. You shouldn't be able to re-click this, even though I don't have a clickable button here. It should be able to do that. And then on top of that, you can protect yourself even if the UI doesn't work by adding in things like rate limiting or debouncing to make that make more sense. Now, if we go back to our slides for a second here, and we go back into slideshow mode, that's one way that like users can really affect the way that things work. And I see this everywhere in the sense that I just bought parking tickets for my trip to SF, so I need to like park in the airport. And when you submit the submission form, it doesn't disable the button, and there's no indication that you've actually paid until the page does a full refresh. And so I almost ended up paying for the parking ticket twice. I just know it does that because I've done it in the past. But let's also talk about expensive operations. Like one of the key things in applications are expensive operations. And I'm not just talking about like monetary, but also like actual CPU cycles and things like that that could cost money on the other side. So how do we prevent expensive operation abuse? Well, first, you should probably do some rate limiting by some sort of identifier, for example, 5 per minute. You should implement request queues so that with concurrency limits to make sure that you don't bring anything down. And circuit breakers are a really important thing as well. With circuit breakers, you can actually essentially stop operations from happening when they keep failing. So a good example of that is like if you get like an error rate that's really high, circuit breaker, and then it could move to another server, or if you're using serverless, you don't really need to worry about this too much. And then caching. One of the key elements to a lot of good operations is caching, so that you could, in theory, avoid repeat expensive operations. So before we get onto that slide, I can actually show you what expensive operations look like too. So I built this, and this could be an API endpoint. This could be your forms. This could be someone updating something. This could be someone running, a AI chat app that then produces images, for example. So maybe it's just like a AI chat app and we write in one light operation. It doesn't take too long to do. But if I spam 5 of these at the same time, you can see that it takes a long time for all of those to complete. And then let's say a medium one is maybe like you've asked Claude to write some code for you. And if you run one medium operation, it's not too bad. It might take a little while. But then you start to do things like 5 operations, and this is running, locally. It takes a long time for those operations to actually succeed. And you can imagine if there's 10 people trying to do all of these operations at the same time, it really starts to like slow the application down. And if you're using servers or even serverless, like this can become quite expensive. And the same for heavy operations as well. Like one heavy operation can take a long time to finish, but when you're talking, 5 of these because a user's managed to like click a button 5 times, it can take a long, long time for those operations to start and finish. And as you can see, these operations are taking, 4 seconds per cycle to actually get them to run. And if you're running them and you're not caching them, you're not queuing them up for operation, you're not protecting yourself with rate limiting, these things can really, really start to like cause issues for users, and we can obviously like switch them around and run a median operation at the same time. So now we're running 6, so you could see how that starts to like really start to cause issues. And I want to talk a little bit about how Unki can actually help. I don't think it's as important. I more just want to educate people on things they should be looking for in their UI and things like that. But if we go back here, how can we help? Well, we have probably the easiest rate limiting on the market. It's also the fastest and also one of the cheapest. So very similar to maybe other products out there, we essentially have a rate limit package called @Unki/rate limit. Allows you to set your rate limits, and those are globally consistent. So users can start and finish even if their IP address changes or something like that. In this example here, all we're doing is setting up an expensive operation that says they can do 10 in 30 seconds, and then we're using their user ID. And if it's not successful, we'll just return a response that it's 429. And I can show a quick demo of this in the real world. So here we have a rate limit demo. You can check it out at ratelimit.unki.com. So we can set these to test. So there's 2 examples here. One's with Redis, which is just using Upstash, and one's using Unki. And you can see the response times as time goes on. And you can see how we're consistently fast across the globe. And this is using Vercel's edge functions to actually rate limit the service. And we can continue to hit this for as long as we want. And as you can see, Washington has gone to basically 0 milliseconds of response time. And the rest are all sitting around 15 milliseconds, 20, 24. And you can actually see the latency of Unki versus what would happen if you did it on a Redis instance. And then we show you down here, like what's been rate limited, what's passed, et cetera, et cetera. So you can check that out for yourself and see how that works. And the implementation is very similar to other products out there. And then I'll just finish up with one of our open source packages, which I think is a really cool one. We don't talk about it much, but we actually have an open source caching middleware with types called @Unki/cache. It works with Vercel out of the box. It's really easy to use. It basically allows you to cache a lot of stuff, and you get the type safety that you don't always get when you're implementing your own cache. And yeah, you don't need Unki for it. You don't need anything to do with Unki to actually use the package. It's one of my favorite packages. I use it quite frequently, and I definitely recommend people check that one out as well. That's all I have for slides. I wanted to leave some time for questions, comments, concerns, things like that.
Amazing demo. Thank you so much, James. Just a reminder to everyone who's listening in, if you have questions, drop them in the chat and we shall ask them. I have a couple, if that's okay. And I actually want to dig a little bit on how what made you decide to start Unki? Was it related to these rage clicks or
no it wasn't really related to that. So the origin story of Unki is kind of I've talked about it a lot, but Andreas and I, so if you don't know who Andreas is, he's the co-founder and CTO, goes by Cronarch online. We originally started Unki as a marketing project that we were thinking about between Upstash and Clerk. And the reason was we wanted to bring API keys to a level that was similar to like the experience you have with Clerk or the experience you have with Upstash or the experience you have with Vercel, right? Really, really easy to use. I don't have to worry about implementing all of these crazy features. I can just like issue an API key, give it to my users, and then use it. And so that's how it originally started. And then we kind of talked a bit more about this problem space, and we realized there was a lot of problems in there that had kind of been left in the past. And some of that was API keys, some of that was rate limiting, some of that was just like, how do I get analytical data about who's using my products, things like that. And so we fleshed out this idea, and then that's kind of how we really got started. And now we're venturing into what we're calling Unki Deploy, which is like the new product that we just demoed at All Things Open, which gives you the kind of same experience as Vercel out of the box, where you can have this like really nice experience, if you need servers that and you're only deploying your API, you can actually deploy that with us, and we do a lot of the hard work for you, like how to configure a gateway properly, how to make sure your API keys work, how do you do caching, how do you do routing, all those things that like are really complex. And then you can kind of match up both giving your API as a user, and then with the Vercel side of things, like connecting them all together and having like a really good developer experience right out of the box.
Nice, nice. Okay, cool. No, it's good to hear the origin story. I'm always really interested how these companies are formed. So over the next couple of years, 3 to 5 years, what would you say the vision is for Unki? What are you hoping to like kind of expand to?
Yeah, so I think the expansion really comes with Unki's deployment stuff. So we're trying to take away like Kong and Apogee who make gateways. It's really, really hard for like new developers to get started in that space. You basically have to have either a PhD in how Kong or Apogee works, or you have to have someone that's done it 20 or 30 times. And that's really, really hard when you're trying to build something for the first time, like a side project, or it's your first startup and you've never done this before. And so we're really expanding that space. We want to make a really incredible DX, just like Vercel did back when, you know, they first really started deploying projects on the platform. There's a very similar thing, which was like, we don't want people to have to like build a product and then they get stuck and they're not sure how or where to go next. And so we're just really trying to expand that. So for the next 3 to 5 years, that's what we're really focused on. We have some other things coming, like we'll probably do some billing stuff as we have all the analytical data for you. So we'll be able to help you with billing. And then we have some other kind of stuff in that space where we're going to do some components and some self-hosted stuff that we can host for you so that you can show API keys to your users safely and securely. But yeah, really it's about expanding that space and making what Vercel did for APIs and making that the future of how you deploy an API.
Okay, okay. No, that's great. Thank you. Reminder to anyone who wants to drop a question for James, feel free to drop it in the chat or on X. So I wanted to chat more about the Unki deploy and maybe see a demo if you have anything right now. But yeah, I'm really curious, but like how much of it is managed out of the box versus what I'd have to configure myself for all the gateway routing? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, 1 second. Let me just move around some directories. Yeah, no, you're fine.
This is how you run live streams, am I right?
Yep, exactly. Okay, cool. Yeah, if you share my screen, I can pull up a demo.
Let's go.
Okay. Let me zoom in a little bit. Let me get rid of this because we don't need it. Okay, so here I have just like an Express API, so something that has like a bunch of endpoints, and they're all done with like an Open API file. So we have this Open API YAML that tells how it should work, and this is pretty basic kind of like API development. I can come here and let me just clear this screen. Let me zoom in a little bit here. That's probably better. I can run Unki deploy here. So here is just like, probably not that one. Let me see if I have. I don't. Okay, let me try. Let's do it from end to end then. Okay, so let's make a new project. So this is what the dashboard will look like. It's not live for everybody. It's only live for me and the team. But let's create this project. Let's call it Express API. And we'll just create the project. Apparently I already have that one. We'll call it Express API 2. This is how much I've demoed. I've done it so many times. So you have this project ID. This is not all fully fleshed out. We'll probably just give this to you. But for now, I'll just copy it. And so let me just change this project ID in here. Nope, don't deploy that one. And I probably need to change this to what it was which I think was complex API. Let's try. Let's see what happens. Okay. So we've asked it to deploy this out. Right now, it's actually building the images locally. That won't happen, but we didn't have enough time in the demo to actually deploy the changes that we have. So essentially, you just tell it, hey, I want to deploy this. And then there we go. Deployment's done. I now have a URL here that I can use. So I can do like a curl to this and go API/users, for example. And there's my results back. You can see that I have this long list of like users from the API. And then what we can actually do is if I go to this Express and go to the gateway logs, is this where I deployed it to? Yes. Okay. You can actually see this request has come through the gateway and that we've returned success is true. And here's who it came from and where it came from. And then in other examples, we actually have this OpenAPI diff, which I can't show you here, but I may be able to show you in this one. Let's see. I think it was this one and potentially this one. Yeah, here we go. So if you make actual changes to your API and you go to deploy to production, so this is a preview and this is what's in production today. We can actually show you all the changes that have happened with your API so that you don't deploy like a breaking change. So for example, this admin/health check, I can check that this API path was removed without deprecation. So you know that if I deploy this and someone's using this endpoint, it's not going to work anymore and it's going to break them. So you can make sure that you even version it or you make it, someone aware that that has happened. We can also look at like just warnings and say like, hey, by the way, you delete this query request parameter granularity. And so it just gives you like a vision of like what could happen if you deploy this to production. Along with that, we get things like instant rollbacks. So if I zoom out a bit, because this is not quite ready, like we have the ability to like promote something to production. We have the ability to roll back. And then obviously you can go and look at like different things in your gateway logs. This one probably has more. If I do like the last 4 weeks, you can see that some of these GET requests have failed. And then there's obviously just like stuff that people are trying to do. But yeah, that's the kind of idea. That's what we're looking at. And then that's pretty much it for configuration. You can add, right now you can, if you wanted to add like API auth using our product. With another line in here, you can add key auth so that they'd have to be logged in. They'd have to send an API key, down with the API requests. But yeah, that's really it. It's really, really simple to get started. It's one command and then it's ready to go. This is a preview one. If I typed in like env equals production, we'd deploy a production version of the API.
That is so cool. Thank you for showing that to us. We have
Sure.
a question in the chat that's just come in, but how can you explain how Unkey works different in built-in APIs versus standalone?
Ooh, in relation to what? That in that question, what are we talking about in general here? Built-in APIs for whoever's asking that question. I'd love to answer your question. I need more context.
Feel free to share more context in the chat.
Please share more context, and I'd happily answer that question.
Amazing. Oh, so built into Next.js versus Hono, for example.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we can do a lot. We have a lot more flexibility than what's built into like in Next.js or Hono APIs, for example. Because of the way that we're specifically built for these very specific use cases. So you can be used alongside these products. Like, for example, if you're deploying Next.js to Vercel, you get like the WAF and everything like that already built in. But for example, if you're using rate limiting for an application, then in that example, you'd probably want to do it during the operation, not versus like somebody spamming an endpoint for a while and then, having the WAF do the rate limiting for you. And then similarly with like API keys that we provide, like, that we have a lot of flexibility in our API keys. We can do a lot more than just like standard rate limiting with a key. We have the ability to offer you rate limiting, We offer you credit, so you could say like, this person can use my key for 100 times, and then it can't be used again. Or it could expire after 30 days if you just need like an auditor to come in and like play around with something. You can expire those keys too. Does that answer that question? I hope so. If not, hit me up on Twitter or X or wherever you may be, and I'll happily talk more about what Unki
Talk more
does.
about it. Amazing. Some comments in the chat I just wanted to read out. People know you from the Tech Commute. I guess that's the podcast by
Yes. Yeah.
the Talk
by the Talk
folks.
people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. So I actually had another question. So I love asking founders and like builders this question, but what is a bold or crazy feature you'd love to build if you had zero constraints?
That's a great question. I think for us, one of the biggest things that we'd love to like build and had zero constraints would be the ability to like give our users the ability to give their users full control over everything in the application. So like API keys is a good example where we could like give them almost like a Stripe portal where they could like give that URL to a user and they could re-roll their keys or find what their API key was or look at their usage data and things like that. Because that stuff is really, really helpful. And we found like a lot of people have to build that kind of themselves. And it kind of sucks that we have to like say like, hey, you have to use our APIs to build this when we could like stand something up. And one of the big reasons we want it and why it's such constraint heavy is that like we are a very small team. We're tiny. And so like we have so many plates spinning in the air. There's 7 of us total.
Wow.
And if you take the 2 co-founders out, it's only 5 people. And so like, yeah, we just have so many plates spinning and so many things we want to build that like that would be our like ultimate, like one of my ultimate goals is to be able to like do the very stripey thing where you can, you know, just give a URL and redirect someone there and everything is ready for that one user to like manage their billing or manage their usage or upgrade their accounts, all those things built into one place so that our end users don't have to spend more time building those features.
Nice. Yeah, that makes sense. Since we are in the Vercel community, our community would love to hear, how have you built Unki with Vercel? Are there any key features or anything that you want to give a shout out in terms of our product that has helped you?
Yeah, so there's a number of things. So the Unki dashboard and marketing site and docs and everything is pretty much on Vercel. Everything is there. And so we heavily rely on Next.js and also Vercel in general just to deploy these things and make them really fast and make it really easy for our users to like go and manage their accounts. One of the biggest features that like has helped recently has been that you now have alerting if your usage goes up by a large amount. And the reason is that we've had one person in Japan has been downloading our OG image non-stop for like 3 weeks. No idea. So we blocked them through the WAF. But yesterday you dropped alerting and we had a giant spike in usage. And it was actually good usage, but it was good to know that like we could rely on Vercel to say, hey, by the way, like your usage is now 37x what it was on average. Like, is something happening? And yes, something was happening. It was just that we happened to be on Hacker News, and then like an article we wrote went on Hacker News, and everyone was reading it. And so we had a giant spike in usage there, but like, yeah, it's been really, really useful. The WAF is really great. The bot detection has been awesome for us too. But yeah, like we wouldn't go anywhere else. Let's just put it that way.
Amazing. It's really fun it's great to hear all of that. I think we literally did a community session yesterday about observability and where we showed off that feature. So that's great. Is there anything else anyone in the chat wants to ask James? Otherwise, I'm going to crack on with another question. That's again very community led, but you're open source, is that right? How would you like folks listening in to contribute?
Yeah, we have a lot of open issues in
Great way
just
to
in our
start.
GitHub.
Yeah.
Yep, that's a great way to start. So you can find us on Unki. You can find Unki on GitHub. It's just unkeyed and then /Unki is the project name. We take contributions in any shape or form. So that could be helping us with the dashboard. That could be like, hey, I found something in the docs and like this is worded weird, or like here's a spelling mistake, like anything like that. We're really, really friendly. Like we have a guide on how to contribute to Unki, which you can find in engineering.unki.com, where it tells you exactly how to set the project up, how to contribute, what we expect when you do a PR. All of those things are all handled. And we have like a PR template to make it really easy so that you know that you've done every step, so that you can, you can guarantee that as long as your code is good, we'll 100%, merge the PR. And yeah, we're there, and I think we encourage as much contributions as you want, and we've actually hired people out from being a contributor.
I love that. That's exactly how I hire as well. Hire from the community. That's the best. That's the best approach. Oh, you're getting a lot of love in the chats. People saying that you are one of their favorite CEOs. Fantastic.
No,
what
good.
a compliment.
Great. I don't know if I'm doing the CEO part right, but yay, I guess.
So another question that I had, is there a Unki Vercel integration at all? Does that thing
There
exist?
isn't right now. It did exist. We did originally
I
have
remember.
one.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had one, but we removed it because we didn't like our DX experience. And so we'll get back to it at the early part of next year again, I think, and re-implement it so that it can go back on the marketplace.
Amazing. Cool. If there are no more questions from the chat, then James, I know I'm conscious of your time as well, but thank you so much for joining us for this community session. I'm sure we can have you back as you continue to build on Unki. We'd love to show it off in our community.
Absolutely. 100%. Love it. I'll come back anytime. Anytime you need a gap filled, I can talk about anything. I'll make something up if needs be.
I love that. Thank you so much, James. Have a good day.
Yeah.
Oh, I accidentally removed them too early there. Thank you everyone for joining in our Vercel community session. I just wanted to say next week is super exciting at Vercel. We have Ship AI and Next.js Conf happening in San Francisco. If you aren't joining us in person, we also are doing streams and talking about it online. So be sure to come back into this space to chat to us about everything we're shipping. But yeah, apart from that, thank you everyone for joining, and we will see you here next week.